For most empires, power was built with armies, alliances, and politics. Strategy, diplomacy, and conquest shaped their borders. But one empire rose differently through a method darker, colder, and more precise, crafting humans as instruments rather than citizens. This empire didn't rely on soldiers or generals. It relied on assassins, silent, lethal, and invisible. Humans forged into blades, minds sharpened into instruments of death. From birth, every individual was a tool designed for a singular, terrifying purpose. Imagine a world where your life didn't belong to your family. Every choice, every instinct, every desire was subordinate to the state. Even love and marriage were dictated by law, carefully orchestrated for the creation of perfection. Intimacy was no longer a bond. It was a calculation. Emotional connection was a liability. Any hesitation caused by attachment could lead to failure. In this empire, affection endangered survival, and survival was the only law that mattered. The empire believed the human body was raw material, the mind a blade waiting to be forged. From birth, children were evaluated, measured, and trained. Weakness was a flaw to be eliminated, not tolerated. Life itself was selective. The state controlled every union. Men and women were examined like livestock. Their physical and mental attributes measured with terrifying precision. Height, endurance, reflexes, resilience, fertility, and intelligence were all weighed against the empire's relentless standards. Two individuals were paired only if they could produce the next generation of assassins. Love and desire were irrelevant. Bonds were discouraged. Duty replaced passion. Every child born carried the blueprint of the empire's calculated vision of perfection. Humanity was optional. Obedience was law. From the very first breath, children were not considered sons or daughters, but future instruments of power. The state became their family, their guide, and their only master. Generations grew up believing they were not alive to live, but to serve a purpose far greater than themselves. Identity was replaced by function. Every thought, action, and movement was evaluated through the prism of efficiency and lethal precision. Birth was no celebration. A child's first cries were not welcomed with joy, but with scrutiny. If the body seemed weak, the lungs faint, the reflexes slow, the infant could be discarded, cast aside in service of the empire's brutal logic. Only the strongest survived. Mercy was seen as weakness, cruelty as pragmatism. Every discarded life strengthened the empire's resolve. Every surviving child reinforced its vision. Selection was brutal, absolute, and utterly necessary. Those who survived became part of a continuous process. From infancy to adulthood, every moment was a test, every step a measure of potential. Play, comfort, and tenderness were denied, replaced by hardship designed to forge perfection. Discipline was relentless. Hunger, cold, deprivation, and pain were constant companions. Strength wasn't rewarded, it was demanded. Fear was punished, compassion erased, and every instinct reshaped to serve the empire's unforgiving agenda. Every individual was molded to kill, survive, and obey. The empire didn't simply produce warriors. It created instruments of precision. Minds were sharpened like blades, bodies hardened like steel, and spirits disciplined to obey without hesitation. From the very beginning, the empire's vision was clear. Perfection demanded sacrifice. Personal desires, love, and family ties were irrelevant. Every life was subordinate to the mission, every action measured against the cold logic of ultimate efficiency. This was not a society built for happiness. It was a society engineered for control. Every heartbeat, every breath, every choice was monitored. The goal was singular: create humans capable of unparalleled lethality, devoid of hesitation, flawless in execution. The empire's rise was silent but unstoppable. While others relied on armies and politics, it relied on its assassins, the perfect fusion of body, mind, and soul, meticulously honed to execute the empire's will without question or mercy. In this empire, every union was dictated by law. Marriage was never personal. It was a state-engineered contract designed to create offspring capable of becoming perfect assassins. Love, desire, and sentiment were luxuries outlawed by necessity. Men were examined like warriors on a battlefield before birth. Height, bone density, reflexes, endurance, and resistance to pain were meticulously measured. Only the strongest were permitted to pass their genes to the next generation of killers. Women were scrutinized equally. Fertility, resilience, mental fortitude, and physical structure determined their worth. Their bodies were tools, their minds instruments. A perfect womb was as valuable as a lethal hand. Personal choice was irrelevant. Two people were paired solely based on their ability to produce the next generation of state-approved assassins. Bloodlines were engineered, carefully cultivated, and every birth a calculated step toward perfection. Humanity was optional. Obedience was mandatory. Every child born was property of the empire, not of its parents. Love did not exist, only duty. Every heartbeat served the empire. Every breath advanced its relentless pursuit of perfection. Birth was not a celebration. Crying infants were examined. Weak lungs, slow reflexes, or frail limbs could mean immediate dismissal. Nature decided who lived and who died, in accordance with the empire's brutal philosophy. Mercy was a dangerous indulgence. Cruelty was a tool of survival. Only the strong earned life, and each survivor carried the mark of state approval, a child, born with one purpose: to serve without hesitation. Those who survived infancy entered a relentless cycle of training almost immediately. Before they could speak or understand comfort, children were exposed to hunger, cold, discipline, and tests designed to sharpen body, mind, and spirit alike. Strength was demanded. Weakness punished. Fear was unacceptable. Compassion erased. Every act, every thought, and every movement was scrutinized, evaluated, and molded according to the empire's precise and ruthless standards. From the earliest years, play was replaced by lessons in survival. Children learned to move silently, observe everything, and manipulate even their own instincts. Every skill was weaponized, every habit honed to lethal efficiency. Hunger, pain, and deprivation were teachers. Children were encouraged to steal not for rebellion, but to cultivate stealth, judgment, and ingenuity. Every misstep was punished. Failure was intolerable because the empire required only perfection. Older trainees acted as mentors and enforcers. They broke arrogance, fear, and ego. Every humiliation, blow, and deprivation was a calculated method of reshaping identity, teaching obedience, and ensuring absolute loyalty to the state. Lies became tools: silence, armor, deceit, intelligence. The empire did not seek warriors. It sought predators calculating, relentless, and perfectly attuned to the art of killing without hesitation or question. Physical suffering alone was insufficient. The mind required discipline. Children were taught the art of observation, expressions, movements, sounds, shadows, even dust in the air. Every detail mattered. Every weakness was punished. By adolescence, they ceased to think as individuals. Identity was replaced by function. They became instruments of the empire, living embodiments of its philosophy. Each thought and act contributed to their lethal efficiency. Every trainee faced the trial of blood, a sacred ritual testing endurance, courage, and control. Pain was measured not by strength or speed, but by the ability to withstand agony without flinching, crying, or hesitating. Only those who mastered the trial survived. They emerged as vessels of the empire's will, their bodies and minds forged into lethal tools. Every heartbeat, every breath, and every motion served one purpose: perfection at any cost. After surviving the trial of blood, the trainee entered the darkest phase of their education, the first kill. This was no training exercise. It was a solitary mission under the cover of night, where failure meant death. Each trainee received a blade, a target, and precise instructions. No armor, no backup, no witnesses. Every action required absolute stealth, perfect timing, and unwavering resolve. Hesitation was fatal. Emotion was forbidden. The target could be anyone deemed a threat by the state. Sometimes a criminal, sometimes a spy, sometimes a dissenter. Sometimes it was a person with too much knowledge. The distinction did not matter. The trainee moved silently, shadows their ally. Every step, every breath, every heartbeat was calculated. A single mistake could alert the target, compromise the mission, and end their life. Perfection was demanded. The first kill was a transformation. The trainee ceased to be a child of the empire and became its predator, trained to strike without remorse, without hesitation, without leaving any trace of humanity behind. Every successful mission hardened the mind. Every heartbeat stolen in darkness became another stone in the foundation of the empire. The killer learned to value results over sentiment, precision over empathy, and obedience above all else. After this trial, the trainee's identity was gone. They were no longer themselves. They were a weapon of the state, a ghost, a shadow, a predator born not from instinct, but from deliberate engineering. This was the Empire's genius. It transformed human life into a tool. Each assassin was both soldier and ghost, both protector and executioner. Loyalty to the state eclipsed every other bond, every other emotion, every other thought. Upon reaching adulthood, the assassin's freedom remained an illusion. Marriage was permitted, but only with a partner chosen by the state, a mate selected for strength, fertility, and psychological fortitude. Love had no role here. Women were equally trained from childhood to serve the empire. Physical conditioning, strategic thinking, and emotional discipline prepared them to become the backbone of the system, raising children bred for precision, loyalty, and lethal efficiency. Every union, every act of reproduction, was planned and monitored. The empire treated childbirth as production, not love. Families did not exist, only factories of death, generating the next generation of state-sanctioned assassins. These assassins served everywhere, infiltrating courts, silencing dissent, eliminating traitors, and sabotaging rivals without leaving evidence. Their existence maintained the empire's dominance, instilling fear, uncertainty, and submission among the population. Stealth became a creed. Precision became religion. Obedience became identity. The empire's assassins were invisible, yet omnipresent. People obeyed not out of loyalty, but out of fear that a silent blade could strike at any moment. Training never ended. Even after the first kill, routines persisted. Skills were honed, strategies refined, and bodies maintained to peak performance. A lapse in discipline could undo years of preparation and jeopardize the empire itself. Each mission stripped away a piece of humanity. The assassins were no longer people. They were instruments. Empathy, hesitation, and morality were replaced with calculated efficiency, fearlessness, and loyalty. Success and survival demanded perfection. One mistake could cost lives, dismantle the empire's order, and compromise centuries of planning. Every heartbeat, every decision, every motion was measured and evaluated against the unforgiving standard of the state. By the end of this phase, the trainee emerged fully transformed. A child born for perfection had become an assassin, a living weapon, loyal only to the empire, ready to execute its will, and incapable of deviation or error. Graduation did not bring freedom. For the empire's assassins, adulthood meant lifelong servitude. Every action, every breath, every heartbeat was in service of the state. Personal choice was a relic of the past. Marriage was permitted, but only with partners chosen by the empire. Love was irrelevant. Affection was forbidden. Each union existed solely to produce the next generation of flawless assassins, genetically engineered for efficiency, loyalty, and lethal skill. Women, like men, were trained from childhood. Discipline, strength, and emotional control became their identity. Tenderness was unnecessary. Compassion was discouraged. Every citizen was a component of a machine, a cog in the empire's relentless engine. Children born from these unions were inspected immediately. Weakness could not survive. Every generation was refined, enhanced, and optimized. The empire's obsession with perfection demanded the elimination of flaws, both physical and mental. The assassins served across every corner of the empire. Their presence was invisible, yet their impact omnipresent. Enemies disappeared. Rebellions were suppressed before they could form. The population obeyed not out of loyalty, but out of fear. Stealth became creed. Silence became armor. Precision became religion. The assassins were ghosts in society, shadows that could strike anywhere, anytime, with deadly certainty. Their existence was the ultimate deterrent. The empire's control extended beyond the battlefield. Every citizen, every family, every alliance existed under constant scrutiny. The fear of an assassin lurking nearby ensured obedience, conformity, and devotion to the state's goals. Training continued even after the first kill. Assassins were never allowed complacency. Their skills were honed to perfection, agility, stealth, intelligence, and the coldness necessary to carry out the state's darkest commands. Missions were both internal and external. Some assassins infiltrated enemy courts, eliminated spies, or neutralized dissent. Others executed strategic strikes across the empire's borders. Every operation was precise, pre-planned, and flawless. Obedience was absolute. Hesitation was fatal. Failure to act decisively could compromise entire operations, endanger allies, or collapse carefully orchestrated strategies. The state demanded results, without question or delay. Each kill reinforced the assassin's identity. Emotion was stripped away, leaving only calculated efficiency. Every heartbeat, every silent motion, Every strike contributed to the Empire's survival and dominance. The Shadow Army became the Empire's invisible backbone. Fear of their presence maintained order. Citizens and enemies alike never knew when or where an assassin would act. Yet their effects were undeniable, shaping history from the shadows. The Empire's obsession with perfection extended to every generation. Every child was conditioned to surpass the previous, stronger, faster, smarter. Flaws were intolerable. Mediocrity was eliminated. Only excellence survived. This relentless pursuit created extraordinary killers but also profound vulnerability. The Empire depended entirely on its engineered assassins. Each loss weakened the system, leaving gaps that enemies could exploit. Wealth and luxury, introduced through conquest, began to corrode discipline. The same empire that demanded perfection in all things started to weaken under excess. Softness crept into the previously uncompromising ranks. Every failure, every misstep, and every deviation threatened the Empire's carefully balanced structure. Its shadow army could not compensate for systemic weakness. Perfection demanded constant vigilance, and even a small lapse could be catastrophic. By adulthood, the assassins were complete instruments. Loyal, lethal, invisible. They had no personal desires, no attachments, their lives belonged entirely to the Empire, and their presence alone ensured its continued dominance till the seeds of collapse silently took root. Perfection demanded sacrifice, and the Empire's obsession with flawless assassins carried a hidden cost. Every weak infant, every failed trainee, every lost operative left a gap that could never be filled. Excellence came at the expense of humanity. Population decline became inevitable. Every generation shrank as imperfection was systematically eliminated. Bloodlines narrowed, and diversity disappeared. The Empire engineered precision, but undermined resilience. Its greatest strength, the assassins, became the seeds of its own fragility. Rigid training created warriors incapable of adaptation. The Empire could not evolve. Its methods, once unparalleled, became predictable. Enemy nations learned to anticipate movements, exploit patterns, and counter strategies designed for absolute obedience. Wealth and success brought decay. Luxury seeped into life, corroding the once ironclad discipline. Comfort replaced suffering. Indulgence replaced necessity. Assassins became fewer, bloodlines weaker, and the Empire's once flawless system started to falter. Morale suffered. The same citizens who had thrived under strict order began to question their place in a system that demanded perfection without reward. Fear could no longer fully mask doubt. Loyalty became a fragile illusion. Mistakes that were once inconceivable began to occur. Missions failed. Assassins hesitated. And operations that had been flawless faltered. The cracks, invisible for centuries, began to widen, exposing the Empire's vulnerabilities. Rival nations adapted rapidly. They studied the assassins, tactics, and exploited rigidity. What was once terror became opportunity. The Empire's unmatched weapon, the Shadow Army, was now less effective against creative, unpredictable opponents. Generational fatigue set in. Children born for war began to resent their predetermined lives. Rebellion quietly simmered beneath obedience. Even the assassins, loyal by training, could not escape the psychological toll of a system that demanded perfection without compassion. The Empire's population, meticulously engineered for skill, strength, and obedience, now faced diminishing numbers. Each loss was irreplaceable. Each fallen assassin weakened, not just the military, but the Empire's very foundation. Over centuries, the state's meticulous control became a trap. A rigid hierarchy, once invincible, now suffocated innovation. Victory could no longer ensure survival. The system was too perfect to adapt, too structured to bend. Betrayal and corruption began to seep in. Leaders, once chosen for ability and loyalty, were replaced by opportunists. Wealth accumulated in the hands of few, undermining austerity. The Shadow Army remained disciplined, but the Empire itself weakened. The true legacy was paradoxical. The Empire demonstrated the power of disciplined vision, yet also the danger of obsessive control. Its assassins were perfect killers, but its society was fragile beyond repair. Humanity, sacrificed, could not be recovered. From ruins, new civilizations arose. Learning from the Empire's mistakes, they adopted discipline, strategy, and intelligence, but tempered with compassion, adaptability, and balance. They honored the Shadow Army, yet avoided the fatal obsession that destroyed their creators. And so the story remains. Perfection can create unstoppable killers, but perfection cannot sustain life. Civilization requires flexibility, empathy, and humanity. The empire that bred perfect assassins serves as a haunting reminder. Control at all costs consumes its creators.